the truth just needs to be stated. Everyone acknowledges that there are people who are undocumented in the United States who are working. We also generally agree that there are a lot of industries that have a shortage of workers, and we need these people. What we have here is an absolute covering of the ears, mouth, eyes. We don't see no evil, hear no evil. We're not going to change the actual policy. We're just going to ignore it because we need it.
Educate, inform, inspire. The Dan Parsons Show, a podcast that lifts up instead of tearing down.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the Dan Parsons Show. I am your host, Dan Parsons. Coming up on today's show, we'll talk with Allison Heimes, an immigration attorney, about the ICE raids in Omaha and the overall immigration policies of the Trump administration. A fascinating conversation. But before I introduce Allison, if you'd like to be on our email list for a weekly summary of the show and much more, shoot me a note at dan@parsonsinc.net or just go to thedanparsonshow.com to sign up. Okay, here's my interview with immigration attorney Allison Heimes. Enjoy. Well, it is my pleasure to welcome Allison Heimes to the Dan Parsons Show. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. It's very nice of you to have me.
Yeah, Allison is an immigration attorney in Lincoln, Nebraska, specializing in corporate immigration law. She works primarily with companies in the fintech and biotech fields, industries that rely on that expertise, certainly now in this fast-paced, ever-changing world that we live in.
Yeah.
Let me give you a little bit more background about Allison. She attended the University of Nebraska at Omaha, where she received her bachelor's degree in political science before attending Creighton University, where she completed both a law degree and a master's degree in government organization and leadership. Did I get all that right, Allison?
Yep, you did.
That's impressive. My goodness, you've done a lot in a short time.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure I've done the same that any other lawyer would have done, so I don't feel that special.
Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to ask you onto the show, and thanks for agreeing to do this. I know you've been getting some other media interviews because, we're all trying to figure out what the HE double toothpicks is going on with our immigration policy here in the United States, which seems to be changing frequently. So maybe let's start with your overview and thoughts on the recent ICE raid in Omaha. Just a reminder to our viewers, earlier this month, ICE agents executed a search warrant at a company in Omaha focusing on suspected use of fraudulent or stolen IDs for employment. The operation resulted in the detention of approximately 70 individuals. Okay, I'm going to officially shut up and let you fill in help us out, Allison. Just your initial thoughts on that situation.
So usually when people ask how this works, they want to know, did ICE just show up randomly, or did Glen Valley Foods know that they were going to show up? And the answer to that is usually the company knows that someone's going to show up. The way this typically happens is that there was some sort of I-9 investigation. So HSI will ask a company for their I-9s in a formal request. They will then review them. And then if they find any discrepancies, they will notify them that they are coming to review them in person, or maybe they'll obtain an administrative warrant to arrest an individual that appears to be unauthorized to work. So it's very likely that Glen Valley Foods actually had some warning going into this. I think there was an interview where they indicated back in February they were asked for their I-9s. So it's almost certain that that's the way that it went down. So the day that they actually happened, unfortunately, just because leadership knew this was going to happen at the company, it's unlikely that the individual workers knew that it was going to happen. So it creates an environment of chaos and fear, and a lot of people understanding that they're probably not going to get to go home. When I think about the raids that happened just recently, my head immediately goes back to the raids from 2018 in O'Neill, Nebraska, and all of that caused. And a lot of immigration practitioners actually met with ICE after the 2018 raids to talk about what could have gone better, what they could have done to mitigate some of the damage. We were particularly angered by the fact that the children of some of the workers were left at school with no one to pick them up, and that teachers had to take them home. I believe 2 of the children actually had to spend the night at a teacher's home because they did not have anywhere to go. So this destabilizes a community when things like this happen.
Yes, absolutely. And, some of the other items that came out of that raid in Omaha, it led to protests, obviously, from people in the community expressing their concerns about the separation, as you said, of families. According to Flatwater Free Press and Nebraska Examiner, there was quite a bit of impact, and there were some disruptions, not only obviously of that business, but the entire community in South Omaha, because I think people feared for just their normal lifestyle of going to the grocery store or going to doctor's appointments. And so it's interesting, Allison, you mentioned the 2018 raid. It was a meat packing plant, right, in O'Neill?
It was I want to say it was like a tomato canning
That's
factory.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. A food processing plant.
Yeah.
So obviously that was the first Trump administration, right?
Yes.
2018. Yeah. And so were you able to have dialogue were there any changes made from the way people were treated in that 2018 raid and now what you're seeing now in 2025?
Not as far as I can tell. There is a large group of attorneys that discuss this kind of thing, a large amount of nonprofit organizations and representatives from those organizations that get together to talk about this kind of stuff. It's not my understanding that ICE communicated with anybody or any organizations to try to mitigate any of the damage. And of course, they wouldn't want to as a law enforcement agency because they don't want people to flee prior to the enforcement. So no, I'll just be blunt. I don't believe that anything productive came from 2018 that led to a better outcome this time.
I think a lot of people are looking to our congressional delegation for some guidance and solutions. And Congressman Don Bacon was quoted after the Glen Valley Foods raid that they were a victim of identity theft, and they had complied with the e-verification system. This is according to AP News that Congressman Bacon said. So help us out a little bit on this e-verify system, and what's your knowledge of how that works or doesn't work, either specifically to this Omaha raid or just in general?
Yeah, so the Department of Homeland Security operates E-Verify. It helps employers to verify that a social security number is legitimate. It helps them to verify that somebody is work authorized. I think just recently, actually, E-Verify came out with a system where it would let you know when somebody's work authorization is no longer legitimate. I don't think it did that before. And so it is just meant to help companies with I-9 compliance to make sure that someone is work authorized. It'll flag if somebody is using a social security number that is used by multiple other people. It's just meant to assist. But I do want to say that the notion that Glen Valley Foods is a victim is offensive. It is offensive to say that a company that is using the labor, whether it's absolutely necessary or not, is a victim of its workers working for them and working hard. The conditions at a meatpacking plant are horrible. Your average U.S. citizen isn't going to apply for the job. They know that. And are they probably exploiting labor? And could they be paying these people better? Yeah, they probably could. But we're not really talking about that. I'm here to talk about immigration. But just the notion that they're a victim is offensive.
Well, so what about this idea that they were scammed, that the business was scammed? Is that possible? I mean, how does that work? Does this E-Verify work or doesn't it work?
Well, even the Department of Homeland Security has admitted publicly that there are flaws in the system. So no, I think it works the same way that if you didn't have it and you had a really good people ops or HR person going through everybody's documents to make sure that their work authorized. I think it's pretty much the same system. I think it's meant to help determine if a social security number is being used somewhere else. It is designed to do that, which maybe an individual wouldn't be able to flag on their own. But I think the truth just needs to be stated by these elected officials. I don't want to hear who's a victim, that somebody is morally wrong or right for working or providing work to people. Everyone acknowledges that there are people who are undocumented in the United States who are working. Everyone acknowledges that. I don't think even the advocates wouldn't come at you and say, well, no, there's nobody here working undocumented. Everyone agrees that this is happening. We also generally agree that it's necessary, that there are a lot of industries that have a shortage of workers and we need these people.
Yes.
And I'm going to read this to you because I actually sent it to like all of my colleagues and my husband after it came out. It is a tweet from our dear leader. And it just enraged me. And I have to read it. It says, our great farmers, this came out not long after the raids. Our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good long-time workers from them, with these jobs being almost impossible to replace. He then goes on to say something completely unhinged. In many cases, the criminals allowed into our country by the very stupid Biden open borders policy are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming. Okay, so what we have here is the president twisting into a pretzel to justify not enforcing immigration policy on certain industries because they absolutely need it. But he doesn't want to seem weak on immigration, so then he throws Biden, whatever, says some not so nice things. Typical tweet. But what we have here is an absolute covering of the ears, mouth, eyes. We don't see no evil. We hear no evil. We're not going to change the actual policy. We're not going to actually suggest legislation. We're just going to ignore it because we need it. That's the truth. I mean, that's what we have here across the board. And so what I would like to hear from Congressman Bacon is an actual plan to address the worker shortage problem then. How about an actual immigration bill? He says he loves DACA. He talks about it all the time. How are you going to get them citizenship? But yeah, that's too much to ask, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're helping my show prep notes immensely here, Allison, because I was going to get to that statement by President Trump. Because yes, on the one hand, he has said for a decade now that we got to get rid of the rapists and the murderers and the violent people. Okay. There's not too many people in America that would disagree with that. But
right,
here we are.
That's why this is fear mongering at its best, because no one's going to disagree with that premise. Right. And then when we witness with our own eyes the opposite of that actually happening.
Yes.
They gaslight us into believing that that's not happening. Or you come to realize that when they refer to criminals, immigration is the crime. Just coming here without papers is the crime. So now everyone's a criminal.
So what happened to that policy announcement that the president made that you read in his bleat from whatever platform he uses, and then just hours or maybe a day or two later, someone reminded him that, hey, wait a minute, I got quotas to make here, Mr. President, that you told me.
Someone reminded him? Stephen Miller reminded him.
That's right. Thank you. Yes.
It's not a mystery who reminded him.
Yes. The mastermind of all this. And so then he reversed himself, right? And said, oh, no. Or he didn't, but somebody did, to say, no, we're going to continue the policies that we've been enacting since we came into office in January.
Yeah.
So again, this whipsaw back and forth as a professional attorney trying to help your clients in this crazy environment, it just seems a really difficult challenge.
And I think the truth is what happened there is that a lot of these industries, the hotel industry, his own George Mar-a-Lago came to him and said, this is hurting us. We need you to do something about it. And him being the man that he is, wanted to appease his business friends. But you can't make policy off of just wanting to appease certain industries. But the reality is that these industries need it. So, I mean, if President Trump wanted to make history, he would actually craft legislation, get it passed, that has meaningful immigration reform that we have not seen in the last 4 decades.
Right. 40 years that no one has been able to accomplish. Yeah, you're right. Let's look at this video. KTLA TV in Los Angeles. This has been going around. A graphic video that has since gone viral about 7 or more masked men wearing U.S. Border Patrol vests are seen violently detaining a father before forcing him into the back of an unmarked car this past weekend in Los Angeles.
¿Por qué le pegas? Yo estoy grabando.
So your thoughts, Allison, as someone who helps people to navigate this immigration complex system, and seeing something like that is going on across the country, what do you think when you see that?
I am disheartened and I am fearful. Inevitably, somebody is going to be killed with that kind of force. We've seen that kind of force before from police force, just general police force, not ICE. And it results in the death of individuals. I saw how their knees were placed on that man. You're going to restrict the breathing of that individual. You might cause long-term harm to that individual. And the fear there is that it creates this perception that ICE doesn't care, about the safety of that individual at all during the enforcement. And then questions of, why is that person being detained? Were they just using a fake social security number? Does that deserve that kind of force? Are they one of these violent criminals you're talking about? There's no way for us to know. And then for a bystander, there's no way to know who you work for. If you're operating without identification in unmarked vehicles. And so do they need to get involved? Do they need to intervene? Their military garb, people may not know this, but you can buy that anywhere. You don't need to be issued those things. You can purchase them. And so it's uncertain if this person is authorized law enforcement or not. And when they refuse to identify themselves, there's a lot of question about the validity of this. And I think there is a lot of fear that there will be vigilantes who appear and start conducting their own little ICE raids that harm the community. So this kind of fear and rhetoric that all of this is creating is only further dividing communities, and fear begets fear,
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Just a couple more things about that video. The son of this person, Baronico, I believe is how he pronounced his last name, who, by the way, he has three sons who served in the United States military. One of his sons stated that his dad had recently applied for U.S. citizenship and has no criminal history. So
that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that kind of force is completely unjustified. And what is likely happening there is he is trying to talk to them. He's trying to get them to explain why he's being detained, and they don't want to be bothered with having to explain anything. And I mean, I did some research into ICE's necessary training. Looking at these individuals, I have questions about their training, knowing what I know about how their training is supposed to be conducted. This is going to sound petty, but the physical fitness requirements of ICE, and looking at that video, it doesn't seem like they maybe have been out of training for very long or even went through training.
Interesting.
It's just deeply concerning. And it brings me to a fear that we're going back to a time of the Texas Rangers. I don't know how familiar you are with the history of the Texas Rangers.
Remind our audience, yes.
The Texas Rangers have a disgusting history from 1910 to 1919, where they killed almost 1,000 people along the border, almost entirely Mexican nationals, but a lot of Latinos. Mexico was going through its own revolution at the time, so we had an influx of immigrants. But these were Rangers that were not properly trained, recruited en masse, all based out of a bias or a racist ideology against these people, coming in, taking jobs, not assimilating. All of these words that we're hearing now have been repeated multiple times throughout our country's history. In fact, I'm getting quite irritated watching the news, hearing the term unprecedented being used all the time. No, none of this is unprecedented. We have gone through this many, many times. It's actually so frustrating watching us repeat the same mistakes as a nation over and over again. Does anyone care about legislating? Do any of our elected officials actually care about changing our immigration laws in any sort of meaningful way?
Well, that dovetails into my next question, Allison. We're visiting with Allison Heimes, immigration attorney in Lincoln, Nebraska. Allison, yes, what is the role? Again, we'll go back to our congressional delegation. The Trump administration just announced, just within the last day or so, that they are now requiring a 72-hour notice for congressional visits to ICE facilities, blocking unannounced visits to field offices despite no such requirement for detention centers. This follows instances where lawmakers were denied entry during oversight attempts. And so that is the role of Congress, and they do have the right, the legal right to show up unannounced in these facilities. And now the Trump administration is saying, no, we're going to change that. Again, just by an executive action, I guess. Anyway, your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's just another example of how Congress needs to actually take back their role in government. I think they're pretty content right now to just let the administration do whatever it wants to do. But if Congressman Bacon or Congressman Flood actually care about this, actually want to see that enforcement is being done in a way that is not harmful to the lives of individuals, or that people aren't being harmed or starved in these facilities, that they would demand to see the facilities just as loudly as a member of the opposite party would demand it. So it's disheartening to hear that there's just more barriers in the way of transparency. This president has said multiple times that this is the most transparent administration that has ever existed. Why? Because he has cabinet meetings that are filmed of people complimenting him. That's not transparency. You know, that that's demagoguery. Like, I want to see actual transparency. I was just at the American Immigration Lawyers Association meeting. This is a huge conference that happens every year. And we invite representatives from USCIS, CBP, ICE to come and talk to us about the trends that they're seeing. They give us information on, as practitioners, on how to practice. Sometimes they give very helpful advice. And I'll give you one guess on who did not show up this year.
No one from
ICE.
No. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they're busy. Damn it, they're busy.
Yes. I will credit CBP. They did show up. I'll credit them. But ICE did not show up this year.
Yeah. Well, Allison Heimes, thank you for helping our audience be a little bit more informed on this. Maybe as we finish up here, what in addition to Congress getting involved, what can we as citizens continue to do and educate ourselves? I mean, we see these horrific videos. We see this, these, our neighbors, the people we go to church with, and people that we see at the grocery stores are living in fear in some of these communities right here in our own state. I guess your final thoughts for some hope that we can all have.
Oh, hope. Such a tall order. I am extremely motivated right now. One of the reasons I came on your show is to make sure that people hear the truth, because what I'm seeing online, especially from government-run social media accounts, is just massive propaganda. So I want the truth to be told. I want everyone to hear that in 2019, immigrants paid $492 billion in taxes. We keep getting told that they don't pay taxes. That's just not true. In fact, they're kind of supplementing our Social Security and Medicaid benefits, even though they don't get to dip into those benefits. We should be thanking them for keeping that alive for us. They do the job. They do incredibly important work in the United States. We often hear about the manual labor work, but they are also scientists, doctors. Yeah. 1 in 5 doctors in the United States is foreign born. And 14% of rural doctors are foreign born. Immigrants keep our rural communities alive.
Absolutely.
And so my goal is to just tell anyone who will listen and to get on as many platforms as I can and talk about this and talk about the history of it. Because, today we talked about the Texas Rangers. We talked about the 2018 raids, but there were raids in 2008 under the Bush administration. Mm-hmm. Obama created DACA, and he tried to create DAPA, which would be for the parents of American citizens as well. Like meaningful reform was attempted at that time. It didn't work. Reagan actually was one of the best advocates for immigration in history.
Yes, he was.
Because they created the program of amnesty, which allowed a lot of people who were already here to get status. And he did that because of the shortage of workers that we had at the time. We are a huge country. I think people forget this when they talk about our jobs and our economy. We are huge. There's a lot of jobs. And we actually have a shortage of births in the country at this time and a higher amount of retirees. And so we need the workers. And like I said, they come in as entrepreneurs. Immigrants come in as students, and then they become doctors, and then they become scientists, and they bring something like 44% of Fortune 500 companies are run by immigrants. Some of the immigrants we know and love so much: Elon Musk, Melania Trump.
And I think what a lot of people forget is we all came from immigrant backgrounds.
Absolutely.
None of us, other than Native Americans, can claim that we weren't immigrants at some point in this country.
Yes, I recently gave a speech about that, about how there's some people in the room who were immigrants, some who were the children of immigrants. But if you're like me, your great-great-great-grandfather was from Germany, and he came here and married a woman who was from Poland. And, and it's so difficult to trace my lineage that I'm just a mutt.
Yep, exactly.
So, yes.
Well, Allison Heimes, mutt or not, I'm thankful for the work that you do day in and day out in this really, really difficult environment. So thank you. And thank you for helping our audience understand a little bit better about this huge problem and to educate ourselves. So thank you. Appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, my sincere thanks to Allison for joining me today. Your knowledge and passion for the immigration population here in Nebraska is impressive. Thank you so much. Hey, for those of you who are on the TikTok, thanks for blowing up our video clips and the ton of likes and comments. It's a lot of fun. Come join us on the TikTok if you're not there. Hey, thank you very much for tuning in today. That's today's show. Now go do good things. I'm Dan Parsons.